Have you ever thought about giving up on faith? I mean, so many people right now are just giving up. A long list of celebrities too. Joshua Harris, the YouTubers Rhett and Link, or even the Christian rock band lead John Steingart. So many people are deconstructing their faith and asking, what do I truly believe? That's why today we're going to actually dive in and watch some videos of people who are doing just that. And I'm going to give you my real reactions today on Church Door. Hey, it's Ian once again. Thanks so much for joining me this week. We're going to do something a little bit different. It's going to be fun. We're going to jump into some videos on YouTube. Not the celebrity videos. There's actually plenty of celebrity videos out there of people talking about deconstructing their faith, but we're going to look at people just like you and me who have also probably at some point asked that deeper question, what do I truly believe? And I've been a Christian for many years, and through my journey as a Christian, there have definitely been times that I've asked this question, do I truly believe the Christian gospel? And the world we live in really makes it hard in a lot of ways for us to believe it. Whether it's science or psychology or rationalism, there are so many barriers that exist in modern culture that may truly keep us from fully embracing the Christian gospel. Now, I do want to say, if you're meeting us for the very first time, go ahead and give us a little virtual high five, hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that every time we put out a piece of content, it's going to come directly to you. Now, before we jump into these videos, let me say to the people that we're going to watch today, I don't know them, I don't know their background, I don't know their full story, and certainly they're going to give us a piece of that, but I do want to say how brave it is to go through a phase of asking, what do I truly believe? The scripture actually tells us in 1 Thessalonians to test everything. And we keep the good and we reject the bad. So really going through a time of testing is not a bad thing. So I want to affirm, if this is you, it's okay. You can go through a time like this. Like I said, many of us do. Think about it. Even the disciples had a hard time believing at different times. We have doubting Thomas that wanted to put his finger in the wounds of Jesus. And just before Jesus ascended to heaven, it says that some disciples even doubted still at that point. So while I am affirming those who might have some doubts and that you need to struggle with, that you need to wrestle with in this moment, I also want to say maybe you need to pump the brakes and just slowly go through this. This isn't something that you would overnight all of a sudden understand. And I do believe that with genuine wrestling, you can come to a place where your faith, your walk with Jesus doesn't have to be completely destroyed and set to the side, but that you might find new nuances and new ideas that help you navigate that faith journey like never before. All right, so let's dive in. What I'm doing is I'm going in through Brave's incognito mode so that it doesn't really know it's me, and it's giving me the first set of videos coming up, and I'm hitting a video called How My Christian Faith Fell Apart, a case study of deconstruction, and this is a video by Sarah Martin. Let's dive in.
God is my life. He's given me life that people outside of him can't understand. He's changed me, what I like, what I want, how I think, what I want to be. I wrote those words at the age of 17 and meant every word of them. Never could I have imagined back then that someday I would ever reach a point where I would no longer consider myself to be a follower of Jesus. A lot of people who go through deconstruction were heartfelt, genuine believers. A quick note just to kind of set the stage. I am a very analytical person. I always have been. My personality is one that I am very logical. I never really accept easy answers for things. I always want genuine answers, and so that's just something to keep in mind. So stage one of my deconstruction was definitely going to college. I went to a small Christian liberal arts college, and yes, it was Christian, it was conservative, but college played a huge role in teaching me how to think critically. My theology professors and philosophy professors especially always were trying to push students to rethink all of the right answers we've been told about God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit and salvation. So they were really the ones that pushed me to start looking at things in a different way and to ask, well, why do we believe this? Or why is this doctrine this way? Or stage 2 also happened while I was in college, and that was going to Cambodia. My junior year of college, I spent 3 weeks on a cross-cultural trip to Cambodia. My eventual deconstruction was learning about Cambodia's genocide during the 1970s. And I remember during that trip seeing these things, just asking, like, where was God in this? How does this line up with what I believe about God and how he works in each individual life and has purpose for each individual life? The next stage was my first job that I got after graduating college. So the first job I got after I graduated was working as a mental health tech at a local psychiatric hospital. And for a lot of reasons, I was convinced that this was the job Jesus wanted me to be in. However, when I went in for my first day of training, every fiber of my being felt like this is not a good fit for me. This is not. And that might not seem like a big deal. Like, okay, your first job didn't work out. But for me, it just did not fit in with my understanding of God and how he worked. Like, I had prayed.
All right, I do want to stop here because what she's been talking about, she kind of prefaced saying that I'm a very logical person, so I like to think things through. But then when she goes to Cambodia and realizes that there's pain and atrocities that happen in the world, and then she goes to her first job and it doesn't work out for her, she leans back on feelings. And I think that's something that we all must recognize. It's our not only our thoughts, but our heart is tied together. Like they're inseparable. So it's not just a matter of logics to discover what we truly believe about the Bible. And I would say so in Sarah's case is she's not just dissecting this thing logically, she's also dissecting it with her feelings, which is important. We have to take note of those kinds of things.
Like, I had prayed. So that really kind of started forming cracks in my theology and cracks in wondering, maybe I've got something wrong here about God and about how he works. Stage 4 was my dating relationship unraveling. So I had graduated college. He lived out of state. We hardly ever got to see each other. I was really going through a sort of situational depression, not just because of the relationship, for other things too. Eventually I felt like I was forced to pick between God's plan for my life, God's pick for me, God's pick of spouse for me, or my mental health. My mental health was really at stake. And so on the heels of the job that had failed, now this relationship had ended, and I really began wondering, do I have something wrong here? Like, I think there is something wrong. It really kind of shattered how I understood God at that time. So stage 5 is depression. My life really felt meaningless. I didn't know who I was anymore. My identity was entirely wrapped up in God and my faith in Jesus. And now that I was questioning that, questioning who he was, questioning what role he had in my life, it really called into question who I was at my core. Stage 6 was getting involved with a Christian small group that was made up of people in a similar boat as me who were kind of rethinking. Being a part of this group helped me start processing some of the cognitive dissonance that I had begun feeling when the first job didn't work out, when the relationship with my ex didn't work out, and even still dealing with depression. So the next stage in my deconstruction was meeting my now husband. For as long as I had been a Christian, I had been taught and fully believed that in order to be a real Christian, you needed to be a certain way, you needed to believe certain things, you needed to act certain ways, and your relationship with Jesus needed to look a certain way. However, in meeting my husband, who came from a Catholic background and later shifted to Lutheranism, I started being exposed to other types of Christians that didn't necessarily fit the boxes that I had been told you needed to check. And that was really eye-opening for me. The evangelicalism that I had come from made it seem like you had to fit their definition or else you weren't really in the club.
Yeah, so this is similar even in my own journey where growing up I had a sense of there are certain things that Christians should be doing. Here's the long list, and if you're not doing that thing, you're bound for hell. But if you're doing, hey, you're in God's good graces. This is a very difficult one to dissect in our heart and in our mind. I even think into adulthood, there's still a little bit of that I have to hold very loosely, and I come back to constantly asking God, am I just trying to do things to please you, which is not what you desire? There's nothing that I can do to please you. There's nothing that I can do or say that'll make you more happy with me. But God, how do I live my life in you? That I seek after you, and that through seeking you, seeking who you truly are, what flows from my life, what flows out of it is something that is pleasing and honoring to the ways of Jesus. Let's continue on.
Another thing that really shifted for me in meeting my husband, while we were dating, I was faced headfirst with reevaluating how I was going to date, what our relationship was going to look like. I knew dating needed to look different. I couldn't go through and live by the same rules. Moving on to stage 8, I was really in the middle of intense deconstruction at this point. I no longer felt safe asking the sorts of questions that I had progressed to asking in my Christian small group I was a part of. I felt like I was just thinking about things and asking questions that almost felt too heretical to bring up to this group. And so thankfully, I was able to find a life coach online that became my new safe space. I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. There are other people who go through this, and it's okay. Like, it's normal to go through this kind of stuff.
I'll stop right here because she's coming to this point. It doesn't seem as if she has anyone that she's been looking up to that has been through these types of things, has been through hard struggles and maybe even deconstructed for themselves and been able to walk through that without just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, there's hope that we don't just go to the Bible on our own and try to digest it and understand it on our own, but we need great voices in our life, people who have went before us to help us understand it better. Let's continue on.
That was a huge, huge deal for me because one of the most healing things is just knowing that you're not alone. I was able to work on things with my coach that I didn't feel safe discussing with my Christian friends and family members. So stage 9 of my deconstruction was finding new communities. I didn't feel comfortable going to church anymore. I really didn't feel safe talking with a lot of the Christians that I had known from church and from college and really sharing like what was going on. So finding these new communities online was incredible. Other people were describing things like I had gone through, and I was discovering a new language to describe this experience of deconstruction, and it was so affirming. And it was through hearing a lot of these stories from other people going through deconstruction that I really started to see a lot of spiritual manipulation in my past, even spiritual trauma in my past, and to be able to process that.
I think that's important too. There are so many people that have experienced spiritual abuse or spiritual trauma in their life, and that ultimately sets them up for this negative view. And I think this is something that the church is still trying to dissect. I don't think it's anything new to the Christian experience, but there have been so many people within the church that have done wrongs, and that ultimately for many people reflects back on their image of who they think God is. Now, as she's deconstructing her faith, I think it's important to point out that she's going to groups of people that are ultimately confirming to her or affirming in her the point of view that she really wants to hear. I do think it's important for those of us who are trying to sift through what do we truly believe to take a more balanced approach. Are the voices that we're going to listen to ones that are just going to confirm or affirm within us something that we want to believe? Or are they going to help us with a more balanced view to come out on the other side of this struggle with a better understanding of the things that may have went wrong, such as spiritual abuse, painful moments, things not fully understanding how maybe things that we thought we believed were things that were just unhealthy or toxic, to now being on the other side of that saying, I identify these things and I know how to walk through them properly and continue forward in my faith. Let's continue on.
Has been a really important step in finding resolution with my past. And so in moving through all of these different stages, I'm currently at a point where I no longer consider myself to be a Christian. Often people who deconstruct their faith are left with a choice between either pretending everything is okay and kind of living a lie, or really delving into the tough questions. And there's no guarantee of where you'll end up when you go through that. But the kindest thing that you can do is to just listen and affirm that person's experience and that person's life is valid. What they've gone through is real, and the questions they're asking are important and a natural byproduct of what they've been through. So please just be a compassionate listening ear for them and affirm who they are and what they're going through.
So as we wrap up this video today, I wanted to give us 3 problematic P's. The first P I want to talk about is paradox. See, we in our rational culture want to be able to rationalize every single thing that we see with Scripture. We want to harmonize it with what our brains have learned. Now, this is the culture we live in, but would not have been like the ancient culture that Jesus was in. They were actually more comfortable with things that were considered paradox or even mysterious. But even think about it, what the words that Jesus used didn't make a lot of sense to our human experience even. He said things like, those who want to gain their soul must lose it, or those who want to be first must become last. These are paradoxes that we may not fully understand, yet for the ancient mindset was much more digestible. The second P is pain, and this, unfortunately, in the culture that we live in, we tend to say anything that is painful is bad, so therefore we should just throw it to the side, that it's a problem. This just isn't true. When I was a kid, I can remember very distinctly putting my hand up on top of the burner on the stove. And after I put my hand on that, I never did it again, because what happened is I learned that it burned very badly and I should not touch the burner on the stove. See, pain oftentimes teaches us something. And as unsavory as painful things are, these things ultimately teach us more about our reality and our existence as human beings. So we shouldn't just take our painful situations and push them off to the side and say that pain is the problem. Ultimately, God uses the things that we go through, everything, good situations and bad situations, to help us learn more about who He is, what He's doing around us, and how we can live a life that ultimately honors Him. The last problematic P is this: it's point of view. A lot of times when we look at the Scriptures, we look at the Christian faith, we come to the Bible and we impose on the Scriptures something that it is not. The Scriptures aren't a science book. They aren't a sociology book or even a self-help book. Now, there might be some pieces of the story that cross over that help us understand some of these disciplines, but it ultimately was not written to be that. The Scriptures were ultimately written as a sacred text chronicling the story of God and humanity's broken relationship and how God was going to restore it. So we have to be extra careful that we aren't just imposing modern understandings upon what the Scriptures truly are. We have to take the Scriptures as they are. It's the story of God and humanity. And God has given this story to us through many different writers, many different times, but the cohesive overarching story is how God has loved the world. And He loved the world so much that He gave His Son Himself, God and man, coming to us so that we could have a relationship with Him. So if you're on a journey of deconstruction or deconverting, I want to encourage you to truly take an approach that is humble, realizing the limitations of humanity, our mind, our body, and our soul. We're very flawed and limited people. And in this journey, I believe if we seek God with our whole hearts, our minds, and our bodies, that we will find a place to be able to navigate some of the mystery and things that we cannot fully understand. Hey, thanks so much for taking a little bit of your time to join us today. If you're going through this journey yourself, you need somebody to talk to, you can always leave us a comment below. We will get back with you. We want to make sure that you know there are people that care and nothing's off limit. You need to know that even if you feel like you're on the edge of your faith, there's still hope.